Boker Tov, Chodesh Tov. Today's daf is daf Hey in קידושין, as we learn for Aliyas Neshama of Yehuda ben David, Kurt's father. We have Aliyas Neshama. It says the Gemara we're at about a third of the way, 2/3 of the way down, a third from the bottom of the page. Yesterday we learned, how do we know that Mishnah said Kesef Shtar Bia or Kona? With Kesef Shtar Bia you can betroth a woman, get engaged. And so each one's learned out of a pasuk. Kesef is learned out from Kicha Mistei Ephron, or from we said because of the drasha of the Yatzachinem Ein Kosef, that drasha that we had really back on the back of Gimel Amud Beis, and we had Bia's learned from Uba'Allah, and Shtar's learned from the Yatzav Haisa, where Makish Yitzia to Avai, just like Yitzia, you can go out with a get, you can enter the marriage also. So they're all learned basically out of Psukim. But the Gemara tried to say learn out from a Kal V'chomer. Well, from a Kal V'chomer, each case you can't learn out from a Kal V'chomer. That's slugged up. So we come on to the Psukim. Says the Gemara, you can't learn out without a pasuk. Again, each one had a pasuk. Without a pasuk, you can't learn out one from another. In other words, you can't say Kal V'chomer from one to another. That could be slugged up. But maybe Tesi Chada Mitarti. Maybe you could learn out each one of these, one from the other two. From two, maybe you could learn out from a common denominator of the two. That's what we call it Sada Shava. You could learn out one category from two others together. You can't learn out one from one because you could slug it up. Maybe you could learn out one from two. We're going to examine that. So, hey, Tasi, how are you going to learn out? Let the Torah not tell us the drush of shtar, meaning of the Yatzav Haisa, teaching you that just like you go out with a get, you can come in also with the marriage document, the shtar. Don't say that, but Tasi Manach learned from the other two. What are the other two? Kesef and Bia. Malash Kenasam Ruba. By Kesef and Bia, there's a lot of pleasure. In Kesef, you're getting money, and Bia, there's pleasure, there's physical pleasure. So you can't learn out shtar from those two, because those two have a different characteristic that they have a lot of pleasure. So don't tell us Bia works, but Tasi Manach learn out from the other two, from Kesef and Shtar. They acquire a lot, or they acquire in other places. Rash Shekon and Karka Bavadim. With Kesef and Shtar, you can buy property. You can't buy property by having Bia with somebody. That doesn't work that way. Lo nech Rachmana Kesef. Okay, so don't tell us Kesef, the Kesef of either because of Kicha Mistei Ephron or V'Yatzachinim Ein Kosef. Don't say Kesef. The Tasi Manach learn out from the other two, from Bia and Shtar. The other ones apply even when it's forced. In other words, even when it's not voluntary. For example, get works bal korchach, against the woman's will, according to the Torah, and Bia works bal korchach aviyavama. Even if it was against her will or unintentional, it works anyway. Whereas Kesef doesn't. Kesef also works on Mavriya. A father could sell his daughter off against her will. But we don't find that when it comes to marriage. When it comes to marriage, we don't find that Kesef works bal korchach. Therefore, you can't learn out Kesef from the other two. So therefore, we need the psukim as we've described in the last 2 days of Yatzachinim Ein Kesef or Kicha Mistei Ephron for Kesef. For Bia, we learn out from Ba'Allah, and the Yatzav Haisa teaches us that Shtar works for קידושין. So we had three things that you can make קידושין with, either Kesef, Shtar, or Bia. Amar Afuna. Chuppah. What about Chuppah? What is Chuppah? Chuppah is either under the canopy, or we'll see later on about Chuppah. Is Chuppah the canopy, or is it actually the Yichud room, where you go into Yichud, what we call the conjugal chamber? Is that the marriage chamber? Is that what we call Chuppah? But in any case, can you get married with chuppah? Of course, you may have a chuppah after the קידושין. What do we do today? We have קידושין and then the Suin. The Suin we call the chuppah, but that's after the קידושין. Can chuppah affect קידושין, just like Kesef Shtar Bia? Rafuna says yes. Amar Rafuna, chuppah kona mikal v'chomer. Chuppah should also work from a kal v'chomer. What's a kal v'chomer? Ma Kesef she'ena machal b'truma. Kesef, which does not give her to eat truma. In other words, if קידושין, if a woman marries a Kohen, she can't eat truma immediately after קידושין until there's Nesuin. So Ma Kesef, which doesn't give her to eat, it doesn't empower her to eat truma. Kona, it acquires, it works to affect the betrothal. Chuppah shemachelos b'truma. If you have chuppah, you could eat truma after the chuppah, and it then certainly should work to acquire her. So the Gemara says, well, first of all, your premise is wrong. What do you mean kesef is not machal? Minatorah it is. Minatorah kesef ain't a machal. Kesef doesn't allow her to eat truma. V'amar ula dvar Torah. Minatorah arusa bas Yisrael ocheles b'truma. Technically, an arusa, that means as soon as she's engaged. Remember, we learned the lashon of קידושין is lashon rabbanan, but arusa is a lashon in the Torah. We have it in this week's parsha in Shoftim. Mio isha shelo asher eras isha below, right? Below didn't marry her fully. Eras is the lashon of erusin, is of what we call kinyan, kicha, marriage, betrothal, whatever you want to call it, the first step in marriage. She can eat truma min Torah. Nefesh kinyan kaspa. As soon as he acquires somebody with his money, that person, like in case of a knani or a woman, she can eat truma. High kinyan kaspa. This is kinyan kaspa. No, not exactly like a knani, which actually he owns the body. We wouldn't say he owns the body of the wife, but he does acquire her in certain respects. So high kinyan kaspa. So technically, matamamru. Why did they say enochelis? Why do we say that a betrothed woman, betrothed to a Kohen, should not eat truma? Technically, he can give her truma to eat. What's the research? Because she's really still living at home at her father's house. Maybe she'll give some of the food. She'll mix a cup of wine, let's say, or truma wine in her father's house. Give it to her brothers and sisters. He doesn't say to her parents. Presumably, the parents know better. But in any case, there's a concern that maybe if you're giving her truma and she's still living in her father's house, maybe her family members, some of her siblings, might eat the truma also, and they can't. They're Yisraelim. So that's the reason why she can't. The rabbi said, don't eat truma until you're fully married and you're living in your husband's house. But technically, she could eat truma. So for this Kavah Chomer falls off. You want to say kesef, which is not machal b'truma, kona chuppah, which is machal b'truma. No, they're both machal b'truma. Maybe this is the Kavah Chomer. Again, Rav Huna stands alone and says that in addition to kesef shtar bia, chuppah works too. Why? Maybe this is the Kavah Chomer. Uma kesef she'ena gomer kona, kesef which doesn't complete the kinyan. Right? Once you made kesef shtar bia makes the first step of קידושין. The second step of nesuin is not affected by kesef; it's affected by the chuppah. That's how it happens, right? So affected with an e. Uma kesef she'ena gomer doesn't finish the marriage. Kona makes the first step in marriage, acquires her in the first step. Chuppah which completes the marriage, and it then should be good enough for the first step. Now, this Kavah Chomer is not really such a good Kavah Chomer, as we'll see later on, but that's the Kavah Chomer. The Gemara says, no, I'll slug up the Kavah Chomer, I'll refute it. Malik Kesef Shekain Bodin Dagdesh Ma'aser Sheni, as we said yesterday. Kesef works, Kesef is stronger. You want to say Kesef, which is weaker, which cannot complete the marriage, can start the marriage. That's a good way to start. Complete versus start. Chuppah, which completes the marriage, certainly should work to start the marriage. Because no, kesef is different because you could redeem hektish and ma'aser sheni with kesef with points. We saw yesterday at the top of the page. It said mal kesef came poden bo hektish and ma'aser sheni, where because it says what the nos on a kesef become low. So kesef you got to pay only with money. Kesef works is strong for that, right? Ma'aser sheni. So there and chuppah, obviously you can't be poden ma'aser sheni with a chuppah. So the Gemara says, well, bia tochiach. Look at bia, right? Which bia can make the first step in marriage, even though it can't be podahek, certainly can't be podahek with bia. So a bia tochiach. So therefore you have bia, and therefore even though you say that kesef is stronger, that kesef is stronger than chuppah because you can redeem hektish with it. Well, you can't redeem hektish with bia, and yet it works to make the first step to affect the first step of marriage. So Malabi Shekain Kana Yavama. Yavama has a different strength, a different characteristic because it acquires by Yavama. Oh, and nothing else can acquire when Kesef doesn't. Well, Kesef Yachid, which doesn't acquire for Yavama. What Chazar then will go round and round. Low rise said this one doesn't have the characteristic of that one, and the low rise said and the other one doesn't have the characteristic of this one. What's the common denominator of both Kesef and Bia? Shekon and Ba'alma, that they do acquire elsewhere. Kona Kesef acquires elsewhere, and acquires in the case of a woman, and acquires many other things. And Bia also acquires in the case of the Yavama. The Kon and Khan, they acquire in the case of Yavama, and it works over here. Kesef works to, let's say, to buy karka, and Bia works by Yavama, and it works here too to Mekadosh the Isha. Afani Yavi Chuppah also Shekana Ba'alma. We find Chuppah is Kona elsewhere, meaning what's the elsewhere that that's the final step in marriage. The Kona Kana, and it works here too. And therefore, Chuppah should also work based on a common denominator of Kesef and Bia. Mar says no.
Where's Chuppah Kona
Ba'alma means that Ba'alma it complete it only for a woman, but it means it does other things. For example, it completes the marriage so that the father can no longer inherit her. Right? If she dies now, the husband inherits her. Rashi says, and he can no longer break her nadar. Remember, if she's only engaged, he can partially break her nadar. But once she's fully married, he can't break. He has no say in the darim at all. And now the husband inherits her, not the father, and he no longer gets her paycheck. In other words, it completes marriage. That means ba'alma elsewhere, meaning not for kedushin. But since we see it works elsewhere, just like kesef and bia work elsewhere and it works here, so we'll say the same thing. Just like bia, just like a chuppah works elsewhere, meaning in the final step, it could also work for the first step. So afani chuppah shekana ba'alma kanakam. The Gemara says, no, you can't learn out chuppah from the combination of kesef and bia. Because the common denominator of both of them has this character, but there's a lot of pleasure. There's a lot of pleasure when you receive money. There's a lot of pleasure, physical pleasure in bia. Whereas there is no pleasure, so to speak, in the chuppah itself. If the chuppah is simply like the bridal canopy, right? So the Gemara says, look at star. Star has no physical pleasure there, and no pleasure at all, right? Just a piece of paper. Mal star shekei motzi bas Yisrael. Well, star has a different characteristic, has a different strength that you can divorce somebody with it. It's got that power. Motzi bas Yisrael. You want to say, well, kesef bia. Look at kesef bia, which cannot be motzi. You can't divorce somebody by giving them money or with bia. Okay, so now we have a three-way combination of kesef, shtar, and bia, all three mentioned in the Mishnah. Each one doesn't have the characteristics of the what's the tzad shavem? Shekana, we see that acquire elsewhere. Shtar also is kona karka, right? You can say this kona karka, and the other ones we said bia is kona by yavama, kesef is kona in many aspects, like karka. Shekana kona kind of work over here too, as the Mishnah said, kesef shtar bia. Afan chuppah also chuppah shekana ba'alma works elsewhere in the final step of marriage to complete the marriage, so that the father's totally cut off and the husband replaces him. But kona kan, and it should also work here. More says no. All three of them apply against the will of the other person, meaning that they all work in a compulsory fashion. For example, yavama. You can be, if you do the it works anyway. Shtar works with a get against the will of the wife. You can divorce her against her will, Torah. What about kesef? What about kesef? Kesef is against her will. Yes, in case where the father can sell his daughter off, against her will. Rav Huna says no. Kesef miya b'ishis l'lashkchen. Rav says no. There's no forcible. There's nothing forced when it comes to marriage. You don't find any forcible with kesef. You can marry somebody with kesef, you can get engaged to them, right? The first step of marriage, but it's only if she agrees. You don't find kesef bal korchach when it comes to marriage. Rashi actually points out a case where it does, where a father marries off his daughter against her will. But Rashi says that right, kesef bal korchach va'afilu konakan, and it still works here. So therefore, you can't slug up this. It's the three-way common denominator of kesef shtar bia, proving the chuppah also works. You want to say those three have bal korcha or bal korcha, whereas chuppah doesn't? No, kesef when it comes to marriage also is not bal korcha. In other words, it's not bal korcha of the man when the father's marrying off his daughter. Yes, it's against her will. It even works against. I don't know why Rashi seems to point. Rashi in the fourth line of the page says afal korcha going out makabel kedusha lebasakana. Really could also be basnara. Is now he also accepts the kedusha. I don't even know why Rashi puts it in. It's not really the issue over here. You don't find kesef bal korchach, meaning when the father's marrying off his young daughter against her will, but you can't force the father into the marriage. The father's acting on behalf, and you can't force him. Bia is bal korchach when it comes to yavama, and shtar is bal korchach when it comes to get. But when it comes to kesef, there is no bal korchach forcing the other party. Yes, the father's forcing his daughter because he still has authority over here, but that's not considered bal korchach of the person he's making the deal. The father's making the deal with the husband, and you can't force the father into it. I don't know why Rashi puts it in Afilu seems superfluous over here. But in any case, Rav Huna kesef mia beishis lo ashken. So Rav Huna says no, it's still a good matzah, the three-way, because you can't say the matzah does bal korchach because you don't find kesef bal korchach when it comes to ishus. The kesef is by selling your daughter for a slave girl. That's a different story entirely. That's not when it comes to ishus bal korchach. And therefore, Rav Huna stays his ground, and he says that chuppah is kona. Yes, the kal v'chomer alone didn't work, but the three-way common denominator, tzad hashava, does work according to Rav Huna. So Rav Huna says chuppah also works for the first step in קידושין. Yeah.
Where does chuppah come from?
What's the source? What's the source?
Everything else we have,
right.
Discussing sources.
Good. So it's not the favorish. It's not the favorish. It's learned out from this, meaning it's from what is the final step of marriage? In other words, we know there's a first step. What's the final step? The final step is Nisuin. How is that affected? How do you do that? So it's chuppah. We're going to talk later on. Is chuppah the yichud room, or is it just being under the chuppah with,
We have no pasuk. We have
no pasuk. Exactly. That's exactly what the Gemara is going to say now. Rava. So Rava says, shtei tshuvas b'davar. Two reasons against Rav Huna. Rav Huna says chuppah works to make the first step in marriage. Two answers. Number one, chada the shalosh tan v'dal lo tan. We only said three. Now Mishnah said that Isha exists for three ways, not four ways. So it seems to exclude a fourth way. So the Mishnah is against you. Where do you get this idea? You're asking in general, why does chuppah work? We're going to talk about that later on. But what we're trying, Rav Huna's point is that chuppah even works to make the first step in קידושין, first step in marriage, קידושין, erusin, kicha, and kinyan. It's number one. It says three, not four. But klum chuppah gomeros elidei קידושין. In other words, when you say chuppah works, it works. What was your original kal v'chomer? That if kesef, which doesn't complete it, can start it, chuppah, which completes it, can certainly start it. No, chuppah only completes it because you already had the first step. In other words, it's built on the building block of the קידושין. But klum chuppah gomeros elidei קידושין. Can you say that you're going to learn out chuppah without קידושין, meaning where chuppah replaces the קידושין? It's the first step. You're going to learn from chuppah shayidei קידושין. Chuppah only works in the case of where it works for the suim because it's built on קידושין. So chuppah is not strong enough by itself. It's only good enough to complete the marriage once you started it. But why should you say, can you learn out chuppah without קידושין? Meaning that it's going to be the first step. That's not a good limud. But at the end of the day, he doesn't really base it on the kal v'chomer anyway, right? He's not really based on kal v'chomer. It's based on the three-way common denominator. Amla Abaya. So Abaya said to Rava, your objections are really not so good either. Amla Abaya hadakamer gimel tnan dal lo tnan. This is what you want to say. The Mishnah said there's three cases, not four. So how can you add a fourth? Tana milsa the chsiva behedya. The Mishnah only said things which are favorish said, as we said, to learn out from Yatzachidim and Kasam, from Kicha Kicha, Xereshava, from Uba'ala, from V'yatzav learn out of Psukim. Could be that the Tan of our Mishnah also would agree that there's a fourth way to make קידושין, to make the first step in marriage, but it only lists the ones that are favorish in the Torah, not the ones that are learned out of this limud, out of Tzad HaShava. You said that, how can you say chuppah? You're saying if chuppah, which can complete it, certainly should be able to start it. It only completes it because you had a beginning there also. That's built on the building block of the rich first קידושין. How can you say shekav chomer? That's what he meant. Ma kesef she'einu gomer acher kesef. Kona, listen to this. Kesef, if you started קידושין with kesef, then you want to make the chuppah or the final step with more kesef, that doesn't work. Mazach kesef, which does not complete it, can start it. Madach kesef, she'enu gomer acher kesef, kona can start it. Chuppah shegomeres acher kesef, chuppah which does complete it after the first step, which was done by kesef, and it certainly should be kona. That was his original kal v'chomer. But it turns out that he doesn't really learn it out from the kal v'chomer anyway. He just objects to his kal v'chomer. But Rav Huna will stand his ground and say, I learned it out from the tzad hashava, and the tzad hashava is valid. Just like you find those three things are kona elsewhere and they work over here. The same thing, kesef, the same thing that chuppah, which works elsewhere, should work here as well. Those three things: bia works for yavama, shtar works for get, kesef works to acquire karka, and it works over here. Same thing, chuppah, which works for the final step, should work for the first step too. However, obviously, the rabbis disagree with Rav Huna, and they say the chuppah does not work for the first step in קידושין. Talk about in case of a kesef. Okay, now we've learned that it works with kesef shtar bia. That's how you make the first step in marriage, and Rav Huna adds on chuppah as well. Talk about in case of a kesef. How do you betroth a woman with kesef? Okay, like we do today. Nasan like kesef, you give her money, shava kesef, right? Or value of kesef. But Amar law, hared mekudeshes li. Marsh pointed out yesterday when I said, well, there's not going to be any money soon. Okay, there'll always be shava kesef, right? You could always give something, there'll always be something else. Yeah, but how are you going to be poda hektish and hektish and ma'aser sheni? The pasuk says v'nosan kesef become low. Doesn't say v'nosan shava kesef, right? You can't come to the best and say, well, yeah, I'll give you the shirt instead. Can I be poda hektish with a shirt? It's coins, right? Yeah. So kesef kesef. Nosan he gives her kesef or shava kesef. He gives her money or value money. And he says to her, Harayat Mukadesh Li says that's how we do it, right? Harayat Mukadesh Li, the Tabaz Zo, Kadas Moshe Yisrael. If you leave out the word Zo, the Gemara doesn't talk about that, but here, but elsewhere it does say Tabaz. So if you don't say this, it could be a misunderstanding. So you have to say the Tabaz Zo. Or Harayat Muresis Li, it's also the Kudeshes we said it's Lashon of the rabbis. Harayat Muresis Li, Lashon of the Torah. Harayat Lian, so you are my wife. It's all the same. That's good. That's good. You say Avo. That's where he took her because we said the pasuk is he has to take her. If he says Avo, let's say the other way around. Let's say she says, women's liber. I'm going to say it. He shenasna v'amra he. Let's say she said she gave him the money and she said to him, behold, I am betrothed to you. Inside your wife. And Mukdesh doesn't work. Now, the Gemara is going to ask a steer between the first two cases up here, because it says he has to give it to her and he has to say. Then it says, but if she says it, and if she gives it and she says, that's no good. What about if it's one-on-one? Maskul Rapapa, time is the reason it works is because he gave her the money and he said those things. Nasan Huv Amrahi, smash, if he gave it to her, but she said, I am betrothed to you, and because he has to give it and he has to say it. If he gave it and she said it, Smash was so good. Aim safe, but the Sefer says, low. If she gave him the money, and she said it, law of קידושין. Time is enough to heave Amrahi. It says because she gave it and she said it. But if Mash was from the Sefer that if he gave it but she said it, it would be Avi קידושין. So seems to be a stira. If he said it, if he gave it rather and she said it, from the Reisha Mashma, it's no good. From the Sefer Mashma, it is good. The answer is Reisha Dafka. Reisha is specific. Sefer Kedina, the Sefer is not really specific. It didn't mean to make such a deal. It said, so to speak, for nothing. It was just said Agaburcha. This is more of a Tani Sefer Milsa or Sasla Reisha. It's one thing when you say something Kedina was just mentioned, like something extra was mentioned. But here it seems to be a stira. The Tani Sefer Milsa the Sasla Reisha. This is being Sosa. The Reisha says he has to give it and he has to say it. The Sefer says, if she gives it and she says it, it's no good. What about if he says it? If he gives it and she says it? If he gives it and she says it, the Reishis Mashma, it's no good. The Sefer Mashma is good. Elochakamar. Nasan hu v'amrahu. If he gave it and he said it, Shita, that's a good קידושין. Nasan hu v'amrahi. If he gave it but she said it, then it's so good. Nas, it's as if Kamisha Nasna he, it's as if she gave it, and she said it, קידושין. That's what he means to say. That if he gave it and she said it, then it's like she did the whole thing. It's like she gave it and she said it, and it's really not a condition. Or that's one way to learn the brisa, so there's no steer. If he said it, if he gave it and he said it, it's certainly a good condition. That's clear. If she gave it and she said it, it's certainly not good. If he gave it and she said it, then sfeiki. Then it's certain, it's a suffix, we don't know. We're concerned with Rabbanan, maybe it's a קידושין, we don't know. What if Rashi adds on? What does that mean? It's a suffix. Let's say another person came over and gave her קידושין now. We're not sure who she's married to. She needed to get from both. So therefore it's important that he gives her the ring and he says, if she gave it and she said it's certainly no good. It's not a קידושין at all. It's not a קידושין at all. If he gave it to her and she said, I am your wife with this money that you're giving me, with the ring that you're giving me, I am betrothed to you. That's a suffix. We don't know, according to the second idea. Maybe it's not good according to the first way to learn, that if he did it, if he gave it and she said it, it's as if she did everything, she gave it to him and she said it's certainly not קידושין, or maybe it's a suffix. We don't know. And if you pardon?
Will Pupa finish it? In the last case,
we don't know. No, we don't know, because it could be that there's no קידושין, right? It could be there's no קידושין, and if there's no קידושין, even according to Rav Huna, who says that chuppah is good for קידושין, here the chuppah was done for the suin. You didn't mean to do it. Even if you say that chuppah is good, right? The chuppah is good like Rav Huna, he meant it's good for that it's good for קידושין, right? But here you didn't do it for קידושין. And for the suin, it doesn't work unless he had a good קידושין. So it's a suffix. It would still be a suffix.
Suffix isn't, in other words, I've got to think about it, but the suffix isn't whether it happened. The suffix is whether it works.
Of course, that's the idea.
That makes the
Right. The suffix is whether it works, right? So we don't know if it works. If it doesn't work for קידושין, if it doesn't work for קידושין, you can't have chuppah without קידושין. You can't have chuppah without קידושין. We say you give a chuppah and קידושין, but really the קידושין is first and the chuppah. If you didn't have a proper קידושין and we don't know if it's proper קידושין, the chuppah doesn't work afterwards. Even according to Rav Huna, who says chuppah works, he's trying to say, he's talking about does it work for קידושין, and here it wasn't done for קידושין. Amar Shmuel, the קידושין, the reason we're talking about קידושין is because we're getting also the קידושין, that's like Kesef Shavak Kesef. He gave her money, but Amrla, Harayat Mukadeshes. Notice it doesn't say Li over here. If he gives her Kesef or Shavak Kesef, he says Mukadeshes, Harayat Mureses, Harayat Li, you're my wife, Harayat Mukadeshes. Then notice he didn't say Li. So we're going to talk about that. Apparently, it didn't say that. That's how we have it. If by קידושין it works. If he says, I am your husband, I am your husband, I am your betrothed, I am your fiance, there's no concern at all. This isn't a marriage at all. Because it has to be where he takes her, not where he takes himself to her. Kiikach means he takes her to him. He takes, not that he's taking himself to her. So it doesn't work. Begerushin also. By Gerushin, he must say, how Nasalah, he gave her the get. Omar Harayat Mushaleches, you are sent away, or Mugreshes, you are divorced, or Muteschadim, you are free to marry anybody in the world, or raise Mugreshes. Let's say he gives her a get, and he says, Eini Isheich, I am not your husband. Eini Bach, I'm not your husband. Eini Bach, I'm not your betrothed, in case where it's a first step marriage. Ein Kam Mesmechah, there's no concern at all that this is a get, and she can even, this doesn't possible from a Kohen. This doesn't possible from a Kohen. Let's say the husband afterwards dies, she can marry a Kohen. Because she never gave her a get. Okay, so the point is that when it comes to marriage, he has to take her. He can't take himself, or he can't give himself to her. He has to take her. He has to say, "You are my wife." Because you are betrothed to me. You are my wife. You are married to me, or you're the first step in marriage to me. You are my wife. You have to say it like that. That I am your husband. That doesn't do anything. The same thing by get. He must say, "You are divorced. You are sent away. You're mutter to everybody else." He can't say, I'm no longer your husband. That doesn't work. But the way you said it was, where it does work, you say, Haret Mukadeshes, Haret Mureses, you didn't say Li. The Shmuel hold that Yadayim Shem Mechichas Hapi Yadayim, that if you have a inexplicit abbreviated form, you didn't say the whole thing clearly. Haret Mukadeshes, maybe you're married to somebody else. Maybe I'm a shliach and I'm saying Haret Mukadeshes to the other guy. We always repeat the same stupid joke, but it's true. It happens that a rabbi was repeating to an Amoritz, when he under the chuppah, what did he say? Repeat after me, hare. The guy says hare. The other guy says ad, mukudeshes. He didn't want to say li. The rabbi didn't want to say li because he didn't want to mean that she's married to the rabbi. So he said say li. So the kid said, of course, say li. Messed it up, right? You have to say hare mukudeshes li. Remember the Sarah Shmuel Yadam Shem Mechichas Havi Yadayim. You want to say that Shmuel holds that even though it's not clear, he didn't say Li, that is considered like a hand, a grasp, a handle, that it's okay, even if it's not clear. By the time we learn, we had this in the Dharma and elsewhere. A man says, hello, I want to be. He's a Nazir. It means I want to be a rabbi, or I want to accept a fast upon myself. I want to be this. I want to do this. What do you know? How do you know he's talking about a Nazir? Shmuel said, it's only if there's a Nazir passing in front of him, and he says, aha, I want to be like him. That's what it means. I want to be means I want to be like him. So it's got to be very clear. If it's inexplicit, that's not a good phrase at all. Time of the Nazir, it's only because the Nazir is there. If the Nazir wouldn't be there, just saying aha wouldn't be a Nazir. Even if that was his intention, he didn't say it. So you see that Yadayim Shem Mechichas, according to Shmuel, it's not Yadayim. So how over here when he says Haret Mukadeshes, and he didn't say Li, how do you know she's married to him? The truth is, he said it, even in the Brisa, it was abbreviated. He did say Li. He really did say Li. When Shmuel said it, he just meant to emphasize those are all the shonas, but Eini Ishech, Eini Balech, etc., or Hareini Ishech, Hareini Balech, that doesn't work. You have to say Haret Mukadeshes. But in the end, he meant to say Li also, right? He didn't say the whole thing, because he was trying to emphasize Harei Mukadeshes versus Harei Hareini Lech or Hareini Ishech. He really did say Li. Yehochi Mai Kamash. What's the chiddush in that? Harei Mukadeshes Li, Harei Mureses Li, Harei Lilin. So of course that's good. Come on, Mai Kamash Malan. The chiddush is Hani Lishni Basroi Kamash Malan. The later Lishanos are teaching us. What does it mean? The Kamrabu Ein Kamifech. The chiddush is later. Why? Where he says the chiddush is not in Harei Mukadeshes Li or Harei Mukadeshes Li. The chiddush is that Hareini Sheikh, Hareini Balech is not good. Why? When it comes to marriage, it says Kiikach, he has to take her, below Shikach as Asmo, not that he takes himself. Kiikach, he takes her. She's the object of his taking. I'm taking you for a wife. You are my wife, not that I am your husband. That doesn't work. That the sefer, the part about Eini Hareini Balech, Hareini Arusa Seich, those kind of lashonos, that's what the chiddush is. And when it comes to Gittin, it says the Shilcha, he will send her away for lo shiishlach atzatzmo. He has to send her away. He has to say Arab Mukareshus, Arab Mishalechas, Arab Muteres Chalaram, not any sheikh, any balech, any rusach. I'm not your husband anymore. Those things don't work at all. Not for marriage and not for divorce. And as Rashi pointed out, she wouldn't even be usher to a Kohen if he didn't, assuming he didn't give her subsequently a good get. Let's say he just said any sheikh, I am not your husband. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. So. He gave it to Rav Amar that's good. He said, that's not good. So he has to say it. in addition to giving her the get, he has to say he has to say it in that lashon, otherwise it doesn't work. All right, we'll stop here. This tomorrow's daf will be on the podcast, and Amir Hashem. On Sunday, we'll start with the last line on Vav Amud Beis. There's 2 dots at the bottom of the page. Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Have a great Shabbos. Thank you.